Some words don't fade with time. They don't soften. They don't lose their weight. They wait. I thought signing the divorce papers would be the end of it. The fighting, the nights without sleep, the pain. But the pain didn't leave, because just before everything ended, she said something so simple, so calm, that I didn't understand it at the time. I nodded. I walked away, and I let those words disappear behind a closed door. Now, years later, they still follow me, in quiet rooms, in empty mornings, in moments when the world goes silent. Divorce ended our marriage, but her last words never let me go. We were married for years, not a perfect marriage, but not a broken one either. At least that's what I told myself. There were no explosions in the end, no screaming, no slammed doors, just distance, silence. Two people standing in the same room, already living separate lives. When we finally decided to divorce, I believed it would bring relief, that once it was over, the weight on my chest would lift. But the truth is, the marriage didn't end the day we signed those papers. It ended the moment I stopped listening, what she said in our final conversation. Those last words would later become the heaviest thing I've ever carried. This is the story of how a marriage can end, yet the pain can stay. After the divorce, life didn't fall apart the way movies promise it will. There were no dramatic breakdowns, no sudden freedom either. Life just continued. I moved into a smaller apartment across town. White walls, cheap furniture, silence that felt louder than any argument we ever had. The first night there, I slept on the floor because the bed hadn't arrived yet. I remember staring at the ceiling, counting cracks, convincing myself this was peace. In the mornings, I woke up without an alarm. No shared routines, no coffee already brewing. No one asking pointless questions just to fill the quiet. At first, I told myself I liked it. Independence sounded mature, clean, final. Friends said I looked lighter. They said divorce suits you when you stop pretending. I went back to work like nothing had happened. Same desk, same emails, same fake smiles during meetings. I laughed when I was supposed to. I avoided questions when I wasn't. People eventually stopped asking. Nights were harder. Dinner became whatever was fastest. Eating straight from containers, sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone, avoiding memories by drowning them in noise, shows I didn't care about, conversations that meant nothing. Every now and then, I'd reach for my phone instinctively to tell her something stupid, something small, then I'd remember. Weeks turned into months. Months into a year. I told myself I was healed because I wasn't crying anymore. I told myself I was stronger because I didn't feel angry. But there was something else growing in the quiet, something heavier than sadness. Regret doesn't scream, showed up in strange ways, standing in grocery aisles, frozen in front of brands she used to buy. Hearing a song in traffic and gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. Passing couples arguing in public and thinking, at least they're still talking. I avoided places we used to go, not because they hurt, but because they reminded me how normal everything once felt. How ordinary happiness looks when you don't realize you're living in it. People assumed we divorced because of betrayal or some explosive secret. I let them believe that. It was easier than explaining the truth. The truth was quieter. We didn't break each other. We neglected each other. By the time we signed the papers, we were already strangers pretending to be civil. And yet, despite all that distance, her last words didn't leave. She said them calmly, almost gently. No anger, no tears. At the time, I didn't respond the way I should have. I thought silence was safer. I thought walking away meant moving on. Now, in that small apartment with too much quiet and too much time, those words replayed without warning. Sometimes while brushing my teeth, sometimes right before sleep, sometimes in the middle of laughter with friends. They didn't accuse me. That's what made them worse. I told myself it was normal. Everyone carries memories. Everyone has regrets. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just memory. It was unfinished. I had no idea that just when I finally convinced myself the past was settled, it's about to reach out. The message came on an ordinary night. No warning, no build-up. Just a vibration on my phone while I was half watching something I didn't care about. Her name appeared on the screen. For a second, I thought it was my imagination, a reflex from the past. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim, then light up again. Still there? Still real? We need to talk. That was it. No greeting, no explanation, no emoji to soften the blow. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt in a year. Not panic. Something slower, heavier. Like a door inside me opening that I had nailed shut on purpose. I didn't reply right away. I put the phone down, picked it up again, read the message like it might change if I stared long enough. I told myself I didn't owe her anything. The divorce papers were the last conversation we needed. But the truth was simpler. I was afraid. Afraid of what she'd say. Afraid of what I'd feel. Afraid that whatever peace I had built would collapse with one sentence. I typed, deleted, typed again. About what? 3 words. Neutral. Safe. Her reply came almost immediately, like she'd been waiting with the phone in her hand. Can we meet? My first instinct was no. My second was to ask why. My third was to ignore it completely. Instead, I stared at the wall and remembered the last time we'd sat across from each other. That conversation had been quiet too. We were in the lawyer's office. Fluorescent lights. Paperwork stacked neatly like our lives had been reduced to checkboxes. She kept her hands folded in her lap. I remember noticing how calm she looked and thinking how unfair it was that she seemed okay. When it was over, we stood outside in the parking lot. Cars passing. People living their lives. She looked at me then. Really looked. And she said something I didn't answer. I brushed it off at the time. Thought it was emotional noise. Thought time would erase it. Now, standing alone in my apartment, that memory pressed against me, I finally replied, when we met 2 days later, a cafe halfway between our places, neutral ground. I arrived early, chose a table near the window, ordered coffee I didn't drink. My hands wouldn't stop moving. When she walked in, my breath caught. Not because she looked different, because she looked tired. Not dramatic tired, not broken, just worn. Like someone who'd been carrying something alone for too long. She smiled politely, sat down across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the cafe filled the space. Cups clinking, quiet conversations, laughter that felt intrusive. How have you been? She asked. It was a normal question. Too normal. Fine. I said, a lie so automatic it didn't even sting. She nodded like she expected that answer. Like she wasn't surprised. We talked around everything at first. Work. The weather. Mutual acquaintances we no longer spoke to. Each sentence felt rehearsed, like we were both afraid to step on a landmine. Then she stopped. She took a breath that wasn't steady. I didn't ask you here for small talk. I waited. There's something I need you to know, she said. Something I should have said before. My heart started beating faster. Not from hope, from dread. She didn't look at me when she spoke next. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. She finally met my eyes. I left because I was scared of becoming invisible to you. I opened my mouth, closed it again. She went on, voice calm but thin. I tried to tell you, not in big dramatic ways, just small ones. I needed you to notice. And when you didn't, I convinced myself it was my fault. The cafe noise faded. It felt like the world had shrunk to the space between us. I thought divorce would hurt less than slowly disappearing. I wanted to defend myself, explain, say I was stressed, busy, that I didn't mean to, but explanations don't heal timing. She reached into her bag, pulled out something folded. I didn't come here to blame you, she said softly. I came because Auntie want this to be the last thing you remember about us. She slid the paper toward me. I don't know how much time I have, she said, and I didn't want to leave this unsaid. That was the moment the air changed. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about closure. It was about goodbye. And I wasn't ready for what she was about to reveal next. I didn't open the paper right away. I just stared at it like it might explode if I touched it. She watched me quietly, hands wrapped around her cup, eyes steady in a way that felt practiced. Like someone who had already cried all the tears and was now living on what was left. What do you mean, time? I asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't want to tell you like this, she said. I just didn't want you to hear it from someone else. The cafe felt too bright, too loud. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. She finally said it. The word was clinical, soft, almost polite. Terminal. I felt something drop inside me, like a floor giving way. She kept talking, explaining numbers and timelines. But my mind snagged on one thought: how something this big could sound so small when spoken out loud. I found out a few months after the divorce, she said. I thought about telling you. Every day I decided not to. Why? My voice cracked. Because you were finally free, she said. I didn't want to trap you with pity. That word hurt more than the diagnosis. Pity. I realized then how little I had understood her while we were married. How often I assumed silence meant strength. Often I mistook her self-control for self-sufficiency. She reached across the table, stopped halfway, then pulled her hand back like she remembered we weren't allowed to touch anymore. I didn't come here to ask for anything, she said. I needed you to know that none of it was meaningless to me. I unfolded the paper. It was a letter, handwritten. My name at the top, written the way she used to write it. Careful, rounded like she was afraid of breaking it. I didn't read it all at once. I couldn't. She wrote about ordinary moments. The mornings I left before she woke up. The nights I came home tired and distracted. The way she waited for me to ask how her day was and how she learned to answer fine before I could. She wrote about love not as something that ended, but something that eroded quietly. Loving you was never the problem, the letter said. Feeling unseen was. I remembered things I had dismissed, the time she stopped telling me about her job. The way she stopped correcting me when I forgot details about her life. The silence I thought meant peace. I saw it now. She wasn't calm. She was lonely, and I had been standing right next to her. I folded the letter with shaking hands. I didn't know, I said. I know, she replied. That's the part that hurts least. We sat there for a long time. No rush, no urgency. Like time had paused out of respect. I don't want you to feel guilty, she said. I want you to remember. Remember what? That love isn't loud, she said. And leaving isn't always the same as giving up. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. If this is the last time we see each other, she said, I want you to promise me something. I nodded, even though I didn't know what it would cost. Don't wait for loss to listen, she said. And don't confuse comfort with connection. I watched her walk away, not dramatically, not turning back, just disappearing into the crowd, like she had always feared. And for the first time since the divorce, I understood the truth I had been avoiding. Some endings don't come from hatred. They come from neglect. And some realizations arrive only when it's already too late to change the outcome. I didn't hear from her again. No messages, no updates, no dramatic goodbye, just absence. At first, I checked my phone without realizing I was doing it. In the morning? In line at the store? Late at night when the apartment felt too still? I told myself I wasn't waiting for anything specific, but my thumb kept hovering over her name like it expected forgiveness to arrive in the form of a notification. Weeks passed, and months. Life moved forward in the way it always does without asking if you're ready. Work deadlines, small talk, empty laughter at things that weren't funny. People telling me I looked better since the divorce, as if healing was something visible from the outside. But her words stayed. They lived in the spaces between things, in the pauses after conversations, in the silence of my car when the radio was off. Don't wait for loss to listen. I heard it when friends talked about their marriages like they were bulletproof. I heard it when someone interrupted their partner mid-sentence and laughed it off. I heard it when I felt the urge to dismiss someone's feelings because they didn't sound urgent enough. I started noticing everything I used to ignore. The way people soften their voices when they feel unseen. The way silence can be a warning, not peace. The way love doesn't always ask. Sometimes it waits. One afternoon, I found the letter again. It had been folded and unfolded so many times the creases felt permanent. Read it slowly, like it was a language I was finally learning how to speak. There was no anger in her words, no accusations, just truth. That hurt more than blame ever could. I realized then that regret isn't loud. It doesn't shout or beg. It settles in quietly and stays, reshaping the way you see everything that comes after. I never found out exactly when she passed. Part of me thinks that was intentional. That she wanted the ending to be undefined, so I wouldn't anchor my healing to a date on a calendar. What I know is this: she didn't disappear. She became a lens. Through her absence, I learned presence. Through her silence, I learned to listen. Through losing her, I learned that love doesn't fail all at once. It fades when we stop paying attention. There are things I would say to her now if I could. Not apologies, not explanations, just acknowledgments. That she was right. That she was seen, even if it came too late. That her words didn't vanish when she did, they stayed. And they changed me. Some pain doesn't end when a relationship does. Some lessons arrive only after the door is already closed. But if we read lucky, painfully lucky, they teach us how not to repeat the same silence again. If this story made you uncomfortable, that's okay. Some stories aren't meant to entertain, they're meant to remind us of the moments we still living inside. There are people in our lives right now who are speaking in quieter ways than we expect. Not with arguments or ultimatums, but with pauses. With changes in tone, words that sound ordinary, but carry weight we don't recognize until later. The hardest truth isn't that love can end. It's that sometimes it ends long before we notice. If you're watching this, and someone came to mind, a partner, a friend, a family member, don't wait for a final conversation to listen. Auntie assumed there will be another chance to understand what they were really trying to say. Because regret doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives years later, in silence. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like the video. It helps stories like this reach people who might need to hear them tonight. Subscribe to the channel for more real, emotional stories that explore love, loss, and the words we don't realize matter until it's too late. And before you go, pause the video, send that message, ask that question, listen a little longer. Some words never leave us. Make sure the ones you leave behind are gentle,